shortly, and we will hear from our reporter Charlie Peters as well, who's in Tel Aviv for us. So lots coming your way there. Also coming up, though, as J.K. Rowling lashes out at Lisa Nandy for positioning herself as a champion of women's rights, is the Harry Potter author right that many women on the left no longer trust Labour to defend them? That's our big debate, and that's later. And hit Netflix series The Crown, well, it's causing controversy again after it emerged that Diana is set to appear as a ghost in the final season. Yeah, you heard that right, a ghost. So I will be asking royal expert Michael Cole if the hugely popular show has finally gone too far. As always, you'll get a first look at tomorrow's front pages today, hot off the press, and Britain's favourite entertainer, Jim Davidson, is on cancel later on in the show. A blockbuster 2 hours is coming your way right after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening. Well, the top story tonight is that the US Secretary of State is, at this moment, on his way to Israel after Hamas terrorist attacks at the weekend. Antony Blinken said the US is determined to make sure Israel has all it needs to defend itself. He's due to meet senior Israeli officials, including the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to discuss boosting military support from the states.
I'm going with a very simple and clear message on behalf of the President of the United States and on behalf of the American people. And that is that the United States has Israel's back. We have the back of the Israeli people. We have their back today. We'll have it tomorrow. We will have it every day.
And here at home, the Met Police has appealed for footage or images of last weekend's attack in Israel. The force's counter-terrorism unit is appealing for anyone in the UK who has direct evidence related to the terrorist attacks to come forward. And that's after the Foreign Secretary, who's in Israel, was forced to run for cover when a siren sounded this afternoon. The video was posted on social media by the Israeli Foreign Ministry. The government says James Cleverly's visit is a sign of the UK's unwavering support for Israel. Well, let's take a look at live pictures of Gaza tonight. Obviously, nightfall a few hours ago. The only power station as well stopped working a few hours ago. And that pool of light that you can see in the centre of your screen, if you're watching on television, is just light that is generated by some generators, now thought to be the only source of electricity in the city. And the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, was speaking this afternoon. He was appealing for a humanitarian corridor to be forged into Gaza, saying crucial life-saving supplies, including medicines, food and water, must be allowed in. Now, a 26-year-old British man who was working as a security guard at the music festival in Israel, which was attacked by Hamas on Saturday, has been confirmed as dead. Jake Marlowe, who'd been missing since the raid on the Supernova Festival, died. His mother, Lisa, wrote on Facebook that she and her family were heartbroken after hearing the crushing news. Now, in other news today, the Shadow Health Secretary says Labour would turn the NHS on its head if it got into power. Wes Streeting argued that reform is more important than pouring money into a health system that isn't working. He warned that the NHS faces bankruptcy unless it's overhauled, and he set out plans to shift its focus from hospitals to providing more care in the community.
Labour government will take immediate action to cut waiting lists. We'll provide an extra £1.1 billion to help the NHS beat the backlog, with extra clinics at evenings and weekends, providing 2 million more appointments each year. Faster treatment for patients, extra pay for staff, the first steps to cut the waiting list and beat the Tory backlog.
Wes Streeting speaking there. Now, a Dorset councillor today lost a High Court fight with the Home Secretary over the housing of asylum seekers on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Portland. Mayor Carolyn Parks wanted to challenge the lawfulness of the use of the barge in Portland Port, saying the Home Office needed planning permission to site it and use it in that location. The vessel has been vacant since Legionella bacteria were detected on board back in August, but the Home Office now says the barge is safe for asylum seekers to return. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Gary Lineker's very quiet on Israel, isn't he? Emma Thompson, all the lovies, very quiet, suspiciously quiet. Where is Gary Lineker's condemnation of Hamas? We've seen reports of babies being beheaded, women being raped, old women, Holocaust survivors actually, being held hostage. Gary will accuse our Home Secretary of using the language of 1930s Germany, but won't condemn people who actually use the actions of 1930s Germany. It's funny that, isn't it? Very funny. The absolute fact is this. Islamist militants stormed a nation and indiscriminately killed civilians, raped women and took hostages. They behaved like terrorists. Hamas is a designated terrorist organisation. The BBC, our state broadcaster, is refusing to call them terrorists. They say they're militants. I mean, it's one step away from freedom fighters, for goodness sake, isn't it? A wise old sage, John Simpson, long-term BBC employee, comes out and says this. British politicians know perfectly well why the BBC avoids the use terrorist. And over the years, plenty of them have privately agreed with it. Calling someone a terrorist means that you're taking sides and ceasing to treat the situation with due impartiality. He was immediately fact-checked on Twitter, for what it's worth, which you love to see. Check this out. In 2021, the UK government prescribed Hamas as a terrorist organisation, and BBC editorial guidelines states due impartiality does not require absolute neutrality on every issue or detachment from fundamental democratic principles such as the rule of law. So there we go. Yeah. He's also, for what it's worth, been immediately fact-checked by the BBC's own coverage in the past. Political website Guido Fawkes have done a little roundup of the numerous times the Beeb will use the word terrorist. They don't really shy away from it on anything other than what goes on in Israel. So, if the BBC wanted to, they quite clearly could call Hamas terrorists. They could do that, they just don't want to. Sadiq Khan and the Metropolitan Police, they're talking about reassurance patrols on the streets of London. Why do we need reassurance patrols, do you think? Just say it. Just say it. It's because we've imported people who hate Jews, isn't it? And look at this. There are more on the way, OK? We can see people in refugee camps in Greece and asylum processing centres celebrating the slaughter of Jews. I believe we do have a clip of this, actually, now. So these are people within a camp in the Greek island of Samos. Now, they were absolutely celebrating, their arms aloft, they were shouting Allahu Akbar and all of this stuff. I believe we can play that now. And presumably, we will just be distributing these people around Europe soon, will we? And they might be on small boats across the channel before you can say it. Yeah, exactly. Even our dear king has been so disgusted with recent events in Israel that he has condemned Hamas's atrocities. He's gone against convention and got involved in the most political thing possible. But not Gary, no, not the lovies. They don't mind about offending Brits, they don't mind about offending Jewish people sometimes, but they're absolutely terrified of offending elements of the Muslim community. Why is that, I wonder? Well, let's get the thoughts now of my panel tonight. We've got author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. We've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks. And we've got former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Great stuff. Thank you very much. Christine, I will start with you. Why do you think Gary Lineker and co and Emma Thompson and all of that lovely brigade, Carol Vorderman, they're not talking about what's going on, are they?
Extraordinary, isn't it?
Remarkable.
It's absolutely extraordinary. And why do the BBC refuse to call what is clearly terrorism? It's absolutely extraordinary, and you've just shown that what John Simpson said was completely ridiculous. It actually shows how stupid the metropolitan liberal elite who run the BBC are. They say they want to be even-handed, and yet they're trying to equate the defensive actions of Israel, which most people would understand, defensive actions of Israel, with the homicidal lunatics who've been raping and slaughtering, and they even beheaded a grandmother, and then they posted the video of her beheading on her own Facebook page so her followers could see it. I mean, that is just unbelievable. But the fact is that in the Islamic calendar, 2023, which is now, is actually 1444. They are living in the medieval age, and that is the sort of atrocity that they are committing. I mean, they need to be called out for what they are, and
Matthew,
it is appalling that the BBC won't do it.
Matthew, I'll bring you in on this now. Matthew Larser, you know, why won't Gary Lineker and co... I mean, we see you, right? We see you not calling this stuff out. Why not?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I mean, let's say that the mainstream left... This is why I always like to distinguish between lefties and the mainstream left in politics, because, you know, the Labour Party's been very firm in its response. It's these kind of liberal lefties that haven't. And I think that you'd see that if Labour was in government as well, that they would be opposing from the left. So... I mean, I think it's hugely disappointing. I worked for the BBC for 15 years. They've tied themselves in ridiculous knots now. John Simpson's just made a fool of himself, to be honest, with his comments today. There's very specific that you can't use terrorist on the Israel-Palestine issue in the editorial guidelines, which is this kind of 2-inch thick book that everybody's chained to everybody's desk. But you can say it's prescribed as a terrorist organisation.
It's a prescribed terrorist organisation.
Tying yourself in knots.
But also
especially
actions.
What we've seen.
Yeah, but actions happen, right, Adam?
Which are terrorism.
And we see such as terrorism, right? Such as overt acts of terrorism. And, you know, this is a real commentary, I think, on some of the, you know, weirder aspects of British politics where, you know, you're extreme left, you're Corbynised, etc. Of course, they tie themselves in knots. But the BBC as well. I mean, we are seeing reports time and time again of atrocities being committed, and they are asking for more confirmation of the... we're going to have to get this absolutely confirmed. How much confirmation do you need?
Do you know what? I'm embarrassed for the BBC. Over this matter. I'm really embarrassed for them. You've got left-wing commentators that are tying themselves in knots that, you know, they do not know what to say. They really do not want to offend part of their fan base, you know, or their clique. But what gets me is that even Kensington Palace has described this as a terrorist event. So if Kensington Palace can come out and put a statement that it's a terrorist event and the BBC can't, what are we paying our licence fee for?
What do you have to do? What does anybody have to do for the BBC to confirm that it's terrorist?
Yeah.
I mean, how much further do you have to go? You can't.
Well, if this was happening the other way round, OK, so if 100%, if Israel had sent death squads into Gaza to do exactly the same thing that has taken place here, you can bet your bottom dollar that would be...
Well, I think this is a problem with the leadership of the BBC, because clearly those guidelines are written so that words are used very carefully in normal times. What we saw at the weekend were clearly terrorist acts. So why didn't an edict go down from the top that you should be able to use the word terrorist?
We need to remind people that the Palestinian people as a whole are not terrorists.
Absolutely.
This is Hamas, a terrorist organisation that bullies even Palestinians.
Absolutely.
You know, and denies them food and water and whatever. But what makes me laugh, you know, it's an offence to support or promote Hamas. It's a legal term in this country. How can the BBC, if they are based on facts, not use factual information?
You know what?
We pay for it.
We were going to get into this a little bit later on, but I am hoping... I know that we were supposed to play a little bit of a package earlier on from a refugee camp on a Greek island. I am hoping we have got that at some point, preferably now, so that we can actually play this, because we do... Yeah, let's play the clip, because I'm going to talk with you about what we're seeing here as and when this eventually does come up on our screens. Yes? OK. So, what... Yeah, there we go. So, and there's a few other clips of those online from this asylum seeker processing centre. They're all chanting Allahu Akbar. They're celebrating the news and that was as soon as the news broke about the Hamas going into Israel and slaughtering people. So that's what they were celebrating. And Christine, we are about to distribute those people evenly across the European Union. And how long before they're on small boats?
Absolutely. Haven't we already seen enough pro-Hamas demonstrations on the streets of London already without importing more people? You might as well, frankly, self-inject with smallpox than let these people in. It is utterly absurd. And if we don't have a really hard line on all that, then we are absolutely crazy beyond belief. We are just importing terrorism into this country.
What upsets me is this has become on social media almost like a football team argument, one side against the other.
Absolutely.
Now, it's very possible for me... You know, I had to log off on Twitter on the day it happened because I was horrified at the sight of the children and everything that I was seeing. I'm a father. It upset me deeply. Now, it does upset me to see buildings being levelled by Israel. I don't think that that's right in response either. So it's quite easy to have a balanced approach. And the cheering, you know, if anyone's cheering, they're not a nice person. And they really need to go and look.
It's about humanity. It's not about the wider issue. I mean,
No.
it's just basic humanity, isn't it? I mean, all I can say in terms of lefties and their response is I'm very proud that Jeremy Corbyn isn't a Labour MP and won't be a Labour candidate. And I think it justifies everything Keir did in keeping him out. Because, as we've seen, so the response from some people on the hard left has just been outrageous.
Yeah,
They're still in your party, though, some of them.
Yeah.
We've got rid of a lot of people.
But let me just tell you now, I'll be surprised if there was a poll in 2 days whether Labour has not slipped 5 points, because people are attributing a lot of that hard left behaviour to the Labour Party, so they need to sort it out pretty quickly.
Keir couldn't have been firmer in his response and remains firm.
There's still a little haunting
absolutely,
ghost in the background
you
of
know,
Labour.
and if anybody emerges from the woodwork doing things they shouldn't do, then they will come down on them like a ton of bricks, and rightly so.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I was at that conference, and what I will say is that would have been an absolute, complete and utter circus under Jeremy Corbyn. It would have been a one-issue dominated thing.
Oh.
And whether or not those people still lurk in the party, and whether or not maybe some views in society were emboldened as a result of the Jeremy Corbyn era, that's I think, that's a valid point.
One last thing. You can support the Palestinian people in the fact that you do not want them to starve or be hurt by Israel. Of course. But after an event like this, you can't start cheering. There's a time and a place.
Exactly.
There's nothing to cheer about on either side. It's horrendous.
Yeah, get your views coming in on this. I just think the silence of people like Gary Lineker and co on this, they'll talk about the language of 1930s. What about the actions of it? And where are you on that? But look, still to come. As BLM glorify Hamas's crimes, has it proven that the organisation isn't about racial equality, but actually it's about the promotion of terror and violence? Nigel Farage will have his say. He's live very shortly. And we're also going to hear from our reporter Charlie Peters, who's out in Tel Aviv for us. But something a little bit different, a bit of a change of topic for the clash, because spy chiefs say that they hope the next 007 will be either black or a woman, because it will boost diversity in MI6. Should we leave classics like James Bond alone? Political commentator Henry Bolton, social commentator Joanna Jacques, and writer and broadcaster Anna May Mangan thrash that one out. That's happening very, very shortly. Stay tuned.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30am.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show, that's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nigel Farage coming up shortly on Black Lives Matter, but it's time now for The Clash. Now, with Daniel Craig's reign as James Bond over, there's been rife speculation about who will fill his shoes, with Hollywood superstars like Idris Elba, Tom Hardy tipped to be the next 007, but ex-British spy John Taylor has stuck his oar into the debate, telling audiences at the Cheltenham Literature Festival that the only thing intelligence chiefs would want is that James Bond should be a black man or a woman, and it would make those sort of people want to join our intelligence services. Right. Do you think he actually meant that, or he thought he was saying the right thing at the Cheltenham Literary Festival or whatever it was to try to fit in? But should the next 007 be black or a woman or both? Or should we just leave classics like James Bond well alone? Let me know your thoughts by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. And while you're there, go and vote in our poll. I will bring you those results very, very shortly. That is active on Twitter. But to debate this, I'm joined by former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, social commentator Joanna Jarju, and writer and broadcaster Anna May Mangan. Great to have you all on the show. Thank you very, very much. Look, Henry, I'll start with you. Should we have a black woman as the next James Bond?
No, I mean, that's not going to be James.
Oh, OK, Henry, let's start with Henry.
Bond, is it? Look, I think that James Bond is an iconic story, set of books and films. You just can't mess with that. And there are female heroines around. You know, look at Tomb Raider and so on. If you want a black hero, you want a transsexual hero, you want a female hero, whatever sort of hero you want, I'm sure there's a book and story out there already. If not, write one. Let's not, you know, so next it'll be Sherlock Holmes or what?
OK, Joanna, I'll go to you now. So, Joanna, do you think that a black lady should be the next James Bond? Joanna?
No, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I can't hear anything that you guys are saying.
Fair enough. We'll go on to Anna, because I think you definitely can hear me, Anna. So go on, same question to you then. So what do you think about this idea that maybe it will be a good thing to have the next James Bond as a black individual, man or woman?
I think the franchise is well past its sell-by date, and it's time that it was shaken and stirred, and we've got a female Bond and a male Moneypenny. How about that?
OK, what though, Anna, if the franchise then started hemorrhaging money, like we've seen with Doctor Who, for example? They had a female Doctor Who. Ratings tanked.
It's dated. This idea of this man, who, by the way, if we were in real life, he'd be about 105 now, sleeping with all these women. There's no women in it, really, who are fully dressed and out of bed, so we need to change that for a start.
But why do we need to change... Anna, can I ask you, with respect, seriously, Anna, why do we need to change that? Because, you know, some blokes... Right, like going to watch films with guns, naked women and macho men. And if you remove that, then they just won't watch those films, Anna.
But if it's about selling it, it's about getting a whole new audience. And also, in real life, say you were stuck on an island that was about to explode and you needed rescuing.
Spoiler
would
alert.
you say no to a woman coming over in a helicopter with a rope? I don't think so. So it's absurd. And also, let's be honest, James Bond probably would have died of VD years ago because the number of women slept.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be around.
Look, to be fair, the biggest plot hole in James Bond would not be that the character does no longer match the description of the original Ian Fleming. I will give you that. I believe that I might now, fingers crossed, be able to introduce Joanna to the fray. Joanna, how would you feel about a black female James Bond?
Well, I think that with any fictional character, it's absolutely fine to kind of change their identity to an extent. You know, James Bond isn't quoted or isn't written as somebody who is necessarily a specifically white man. So to change his race, for example, I don't think would make any difference. You don't have to necessarily be white to be British. So anybody who has a problem with changing the race of James Bond is essentially saying that. However, you know, if somebody was to say, should we have a female James Bond, I would say, well, he's called James Bond. He is male, so you couldn't necessarily change his gender or his sexuality.
Yeah.
But in terms of race, there is nothing about the James Bond story that ties him to being, I don't know, Irish or Scottish or something like that. So it's absolutely fine. And you also don't have to be white to be an MI5 either.
No, or indeed MI6. I mean, Henry, do you think some people would say that if Bond ended up, you know, being your kind of classic rainbow flag wearing individual, or it turned into a woman, or they kind of diversified it or whatever, that maybe Bond would be the most visible symbol of capitulation to the woke brigade?
Well, I think so, Patrick. You know, I'm sorry, but I do. Why mess with it? Fine, it maybe Bond is outdated. I'm not arguing that it's not an outdated story. I quite enjoy them, but maybe it's outdated. I accept that. But why then take that story and change it?
Yeah.
And actually, why not create a new story? Create a modern story for the modern era. If you think it's outdated, I don't argue. But if you want to, I mean, it's like people who take a house, a nice sort of 400-year-old house with all the fittings, and then rip it out and put in modern fittings and change the character of it entirely. Why do it? Why not create a nice new modern house?
Okay.
It's the same with all of these stories. Why mess with them? Why not keep the original and then create new stories for the new era? I don't understand.
Anna, I'm going to go to you. Anna, I mean, he's got a point. Look, I'm not coming after Sex in the City. I'm not saying that's got to be 4 or 5 blokes, yeah, all beer drinking, cigarettes on the go. No, I'm not saying I leave your stuff alone, right? Can't you leave Bond?
There's been 7 James Bonds. There hasn't been 1. And I think characters like Mickey Mouse and Winnie the Pooh, you can't get someone else to play them, but you can get anybody to play an MI6 spy. So what's the problem here? It's just old-fashioned.
Let's get a white man to play Laura Croft, shall we?
To say a woman can't be a hero in a film.
I don't know if that's what people are saying, though. I think people are just saying, can we leave James Bond as it is? Joanna, I suppose the big question for me would be this, right, which is the point of why this chap said it was because he thinks, and he was a spy. I don't want to blow his cover. I think he blew that years ago. But he was saying that he does think that if Bond was black and or a woman, that would lead to more black people and women joining our security services. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. You know, we all know that representation matters, and movies and film are the best ways of marketing sometimes. So I think when people watch something, and let's not forget that James Bond isn't only just watched by middle-aged men, it's also watched by, you know, young people growing up. And I think that if you can see that type of person in you as a reflection of you, then obviously it's great marketing for them. They know maybe that they've got a big diversity problem and they need best role models, and James Bond is the biggest one. Sorry. I'm still talking.
Sorry.
James Bond is the best representation of it. So what better marketing would there be for MI6 than to have some form of diversity? And what you were saying about changing the story, how is it changing the story by just having a different shade of skin on the person who's called James Bond? They're not changing any part of the story because the story never actually focuses on his background or his ethnicity.
That's interesting because I'll put that to Henry now. Then I suppose are you more bothered, Henry, about the idea of Bond being a woman than you are about, say, Bond being black?
Yes, I am. And Bond can be black. I don't have a big problem with that at all. I don't have a problem with it at all. But look, you know, it's like Laura Croft in Tomb Raider being a bloke. It just doesn't work. And so I'm sorry, but and the other thing is that it is totally untrue to imply to potential recruits that James Bond reflects the reality of working for the Secret Intelligence Service.
Yeah.
He doesn't. And so if you're recruiting people on the basis of James Bond, you've got the wrong people.
Well, I mean, I suppose there is that, actually. I mean, that would have to be completely and utterly nuts, wouldn't it? The idea that if there's people going around there who, end up in the most ridiculous situations possible, I suppose. But look, all of you, thank you very, very much. We got there in the end with connections, etc. And it was former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, social commentator Joanna Georgiou, and the writer and broadcaster Anna May Mangan. Great stuff. So who do you agree with? As spy chiefs say that they hope the next James Bond will be either black or a woman because it would boost diversity to MI6. Should we leave James Bond and the classics alone? Al on Twitter says, I won't watch the next James Bond film if they change the character simply to exclude white people. OK? Rohan on Twitter says, just leave Bond alone and write a proper story for a black female spy. Just lazy and mediocre writers who can't come up with something new. I just think they don't seem to care, though, do they, about this idea that wokeifying everything inevitably hits you in the pocket. It's called go woke, go broke for a reason, a lot of the time. A lot of the time. And yet these massive corporations and these massive franchises will keep doing it and almost just take the hit. But Martin says, never mind diversity. What about an actor's capability? Isn't that more important? Or have we lost our minds over woke box ticking? Well, your verdict's in. Here we go to the world of Twitter, now known as X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. And 95% of you agree that we should leave classics like James Bond alone. Just 5% of you say we shouldn't. There we go. Well, look, coming up. As Hamas's evil is laid bare with unconfirmed reports of the massacring of 40 innocent children, why is there deafening silence from the habitual bleeding hearts in the celebrity world? Emma Thompson, Gary Lineker, broadcaster and journalist Angela Epstein takes them to task over their silence, and that happens very shortly. But first, as BLM glorify Hamas's crimes, has it proven that the organisation isn't about racial equality at all, but the promotion of terror and violence? Nigel Farage has his say, and we will also hear from our reporter Charlie Peters, who is in Tel Aviv for us. Don't go anywhere. Nigel's on when I come back.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Journalist, broadcaster and fan favourite Angela Epstein is waiting in the wings, but first I'm joined now by GB News' very own Nigel Farage. Now, minority rights group Black Lives Matter, remember them? Well, it sparked international outrage over their response to the horrendous ongoing conflict in Israel after a BLM Chicago page yesterday shared the following post. Featuring a sickening cartoon of a paraglider, the graphic seems to celebrate the Hamas terrorists that used paragliders to brutally execute more than 260 terrified revellers at a music festival on Saturday, marking the worst civilian massacre in Israel's history. BLM's UK offshoot has been pumping out propaganda against Israel, offering solidarity to Palestine and slamming Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy for, quote, siding with the oppressor in his recent condemnation of the prescribed terror group, Hamas. Nigel, welcome back to the show. Now, as Black Lives Matter groups post pictures of paragliders, they refuse to condemn Hamas, etc., is this proof, actually, that BLM is less about racial equality and it's more about the promotion of division, terror and violence?
In 2020, after the George Floyd murder, within 24 hours, we had police taking the knee, we had the desecration of the cenotaph, we had Winston Churchill's statue being attacked, and I was pretty much a lone voice, Patrick, in saying, I know these people, I've seen them in America, they are an overtly Marxist, dangerous organisation intent on bringing down Western civilization as we know it. And I said these things because that's what they said on their own website. But of course, the world went mad. You know, everybody came out supporting BLM, all the big corporates, Starbucks, the banks, everybody. And I was sacked from LBC. Sacked from LBC for daring to tell the truth. Well, one of my problems in life is I tend to be a little bit ahead of the curve. But the truth of it is becoming clear. And yeah, we can see absolutely from BLM UK and from this chapter in Chicago, who they really are. And worth mentioning, of course, Patrice Cullors, the sort of founder of the whole thing, finished up owning millions of pounds of property. One of the people involved in toppling the statue into the dock in Bristol, the Colston, the slave trader, former slave trader, but also philanthropist. She's been found guilty of absconding with 30,000 quid. The whole organisation is corrupt, rotten to the core, and yet, the upper echelons of British society were so taken in by it that still the England football team take the knee, a BLM gesture.
Yeah, and presumably that needs to stop now. I mean, at what point are we going to say as a society that we can all accept, absolutely, so Black lives do matter, but the organisation Black Lives Matter is something completely different, and I think we should be distanced from wider right-thinking society, no?
Look, 100 years ago, what the Leninist Marxists did in Russia was to use class as a means of fomenting division. What the modern-day Marxists are doing is they're using race and using white guilt as a means, literally, of destroying our society. This organisation is mad, bad, dangerous, and I'm pleased that we're now having a chance to call it out. And funny thing is, Patrick, this conversation you and I are having will not lead to outrage in tomorrow morning's newspapers, because everyone knows that actually I was right 3 years ago on this. They were wrong. Not that they would ever admit it.
No, I mean, do you think you deserve an apology for that?
I deserve an apology for many things over the years. I deserve an apology from virtually everybody over, the condemnation of me in 2020. I was right about this organisation. And look, the worry is, of course, they're not alone. The worry is there are now voices in the radical Islamic world calling for a day of action next Friday.
Yeah.
And by that, they don't just mean what's going on in Gaza. They mean actually in our country as well. And the next time 500 people cross the English Channel, when the weather improves next week, we must then ask ourselves a question. Given that these young men have come from countries that have fostered ISIS, Hamas, and that they throw their documents into the English Channel, we must ask ourselves, how many people are we allowing into Britain that will ultimately do us very great harm?
Yeah, I think that is a question now, as I showed a clip a little bit earlier on of an asylum seeker camp on one of the Greek islands who are openly celebrating what was going on in Israel. Those people, as it currently stands, are ready and waiting to be distributed across the European Union and possibly will end up on boats across the Channel in Britain. Yep. You just have to wonder, why on earth are we doing this to ourselves? I just want to read a tweet published today by this Black Lives Matter Chicago group. So they said this. They went, yesterday we sent out messages that we aren't proud of. That's interesting. We stand with Palestine and the people who will do what they must to live free. Our hearts are with the grieving mothers, those rescuing babies from rubble who are in danger of being wiped out completely. So that was their response there. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't really look like they were actually that ashamed of their initial tweet, does it, when you read that? But can I just whiz us on to another little topic now, Nigel? Because Sir Keir Starmer's keynote speech at the Labour Party conference yesterday was disrupted by a glitter-wielding protester demanding a People's House, whatever all of that's supposed to mean. Let's play the clip.
Thank you, Conference. True democracy is citizen-led. Politics needs an update. We demand a People's House.
The painfully long time it took security to tackle that protester was immediately obvious, should be a massive concern. It could easily have been harmed, couldn't he? He could easily have had something much more sinister on him, a knife or something like that. And it sparked debate across the security of Britain's politicians, Nigel. So the senseless murders we've had of Joe Cox, David Amos as well, Sir David Amos, still fresh in the nation's mind. And Nigel, as well, look, you also fell victim, didn't you, to an assault by a member of the public in Newcastle back in 2019. I think it involved a milkshake, that's actually. I can imagine that... Oh, there you go. Sorry to remind you of that, Nigel. I can imagine that must have been quite scary at the time, because let's be honest, I mean, that could have been anything. There must have been a moment when you didn't know it was a milkshake, right?
That was, for me, one of many assaults. Right. I was hit over the head with a banner, with a huge placard, not long after having neck surgery. I had an egg smashed over my head. I had drinks thrown at me, bottles thrown at me. I was attacked endlessly. But that's because I was going and doing street walkabouts. And I felt that was part of what I had to do to be approachable and open. So I went through this many, many times, and often, Patrick, I was very thoughtful about it. And that's why other politicians don't do it. They go around the country, they say, oh, today we're in Cleethorpes, and there's an audience of party members asking sort of long hop style cricket questions. But never at a UKIP conference would anything like what happened to Labour have ever happened to me. This is the most astonishing lapse of security that has happened within the Labour Party. You have to ask a question. If they can't even manage a party conference without their leader being in danger, how on earth can they run the country?
Yeah, I mean, was that something that seriously stood out to you then? Because he could have been killed, to Keir Starmer. I mean, he absolutely could have been. And it was... Well, I was in the hall outside, and you see it happen and go, oh, there's a protester. And I had that length of time to go, oh, my God, is no one going to do anything about this? It went on for a heck of a long time.
Well, it was about 15 seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a long time. They just weren't prepared for it. Makes you realise that the Labour security were not checking bags, were not checking details. You're right. It could have been significantly worse than it was. And it just makes me wonder, you know, we've got a Labour Party that is doing very well.
Yeah.
Because the Conservatives have let everyone down and are doing so badly. It's almost as if we're not saying, you know, Labour have this 20-point lead because it's a positive affirmation of Starmerism. It's more about negativity towards the Conservatives, and they need to have a really good, cold, hard look at themselves. How on earth can they have allowed this message to go out to the public?
Yeah, I mean, there is an irony. I was at the Tory party conference, very strict security, massively strict security. Labour Party conference resembled something like open borders. There's a joke in there somewhere, but I will not make it. Nigel, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. You take care. All right, that's Nigel Farage there. Of course, he'll be lighting up your screens again tomorrow evening, won't he? But coming up, as a protester scales Sheffield Town Hall to replace an Israeli flag with a Palestinian flag, and Suella Braverman tells police to treat Hamas supporters with the full force of the law. Should people who support the terror group be denied asylum into the UK? So my panel will debate that later on tonight. We will also have a bumper review of tomorrow's front pages today. Those front pages are going to be of vital importance. I will bring those all to you very, very shortly. But next, as Hamas's evil is laid bare, unconfirmed reports of the massacring of 40 innocent babies and children. Why is there deafening silence from those habitual bleeding hearts of the celebrity world? Emma Thompson, Gary Lineker, broadcaster and journalist Angela Epstein takes them to task over their silence, and we will also hear from our man on the ground, Charlie Peters, with the very latest from Tel Aviv. I'll see you in a few moments.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, the Israel-Hamas war continues to escalate as the terror group responds to the retaliatory bombing of Gaza with rocket strikes of its own in the south of the country. Now, earlier, Israeli Defense Forces rode back on its warning that a hostile aircraft had entered its airspace from Lebanon. But it's a confusing picture, especially considering that we got reports that some 20 drones had come in from Lebanon, that maybe Hezbollah had now joined the war. I just wanted to get an update for you. OK, let's cross now to Tel Aviv, where our correspondent Charlie Peters has the latest for us.
Israelis started their day as they have the last 3 days, with news of their forces gathering on the south near the border with Gaza as it prepares for a likely ground invasion of the territory that they have not been in since 2014. In the north, the day started with yet more shelling and mortar fire from Lebanese Hezbollah. They also fired an anti-tank guided missile, and injuries were reported in the north. There was shelling and mortar fire also from Syria, a new front in this conflict, the first kinetic development in that part of the region. On both fronts, the Israeli Defense Forces returned fire with tank artillery and helicopter gunships. Throughout the day, rocket barrages from the Gaza Strip were common. Ashkelon, Ashdod and Tel Aviv all being hit in the central and southern regions, and then down near Gaza, many towns like Sderot being regularly hit by rocket barrages throughout the day. The moment of the highest sensitivity and security concern came at around 6 p.m. when reports of Hezbollah crossing the northern border with a swarm of drones and terrorists on the ground filtered through to people in Tel Aviv. The alert system went into overdrive. People were fleeing from the location we were, where volunteers were sending supplies to civilians and soldiers in the north and south, and we were all sent into the rocket shelter. Reports since have now confirmed that Hezbollah has not crossed the border, and those drone swarms did not happen. It demonstrates the level of sensitivity being felt here, as Israel is not broken, but is definitely very much bruised.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Our man in Tel Aviv. I'm going to go now to broadcaster, journalist Angela Epstein, who has written an eviscerating column about Gary Lineker and the silence, Emma Thompson, perpetual lovey as well. I'm going to just bring Angela straight in just a second or two there, because Angela was talking about where are they? You know, the likes of Gary Lineker when it comes to issues going on with Hamas. Why not? Why are they unable to call things out, to call terrorists out? Angela, there you are. So look, what would your message to Gary Lineker and co be, the Lovey Brigade?
Call me. In all seriousness, I've just returned from Israel. I was there by default in the midst of all this. I'd gone to write a travel piece for a national newspaper, ironically. That's how unexpected this was. I also have a lot of friends and family there. And therefore it astonished all of us when out of nowhere we went to bed Friday night with after a jolly dinner and woke up on Saturday morning to sirens and rockets. So I can tell the likes of Gary Lineker, Emma Thompson, every kind of campaigning actor or public figure who has spoken so vociferously and admirably on a lot of important topics. I can tell them that it is grim out there, and I was just a visitor passing through. So where are you? Why are you not using your enormous platforms to reach people and say, this at this moment in time is not about politics. This is about a sovereign nation being the victim of an unprovoked...
Do you think, Angela, do you think, Angela, that actually, when push comes to shove, some people care less about offending the Jewish community than they do about offending elements of the Muslim community?
I think that's certainly the case. Unfortunately, and I must say there's a lot of people in the Muslim community being hugely supportive of Israel, but it is a very damaging stance. There have always been double standards where Israel's concerned. It's held up to a certain level that other countries are not. If a swarm of invading terrorists, all massed on Doncaster, murdering, maiming, kidnapping, what would we expect the government to do? We would hate it if other people in other countries were saying, well, let's look at the background to this. We'd just say this is a human rights issue. They are massacring innocent people. This is good versus evil. So celebrities, that's all they need to say. They don't need to get, nail their colours to the mast.
Or stop the virtue signalling on everything else. Or just stop it on everything else. You know, they start talking about the language of 1930s Germany, but they don't condemn the actual actions of it. Look, Angela, thank you very much. I'm so sorry it's short and sweet, but we've been a bit pressed for time so far. It's Angela Epstein there. Thank you very much for coming on and making your point very clear, frankly enforcing, I think, what a lot of GB News viewers will be thinking. Now, coming up, her hit Netflix series, The Crown, is causing a lot of controversy again after it emerged that Diana is set to appear as a ghost in the final season. I think that's a bit disrespectful, don't you? I'll be asking royal expert Michael Cole if the hugely popular show has finally gone too far. I mean, the ghost of Diana, come on now. Even for me, that's a bit much. But next, as a protester scaled Sheffield Town Hall to replace the Israeli flag with the Palestinian flag, I am asking, have we imported terrorists? All of that coming your way, and much, much more.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Today's rain clears south, turning sunnier in the north for Thursday, but also turning colder as weather fronts sink south, allowing cold air from the north to push into much of the UK. However, these weather fronts, marking the boundary between warm air to the south and cold air to the north, contain some wet weather. And we've certainly seen a wet day across much of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia. And rain sinks slowly south overnight. Still some heavy downpours through parts of South Wales, the South Midlands, East Anglia. Damp and gloomy as we begin things on Thursday, but mild in the far south. Colder but brighter across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, a frost in places. And actually, that's where the brightest weather will remain throughout Thursday. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland, North Wales, Northern England, southern and eastern Scotland. Still some showers and a bit of a breeze for the northwest of Scotland, but not as much as Wednesday. Further south, it stays damp and gloomy, although the heavier rain eases for a time. 19 Celsius in the south, albeit with grey leaden skies. Then the rain peps up once again through much of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England for a time on Friday morning. Some heavy downpours also potentially for the southeast of England. Could cause some issues, a rain warning in force. That clears through and then colder weather arrives for the weekend with quite a few showers for Saturday, drier for Sunday and some overnight frosts.
Well, it's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christie's and this is GB News Tonight. Now, shocking scenes strike Sheffield as a pro-Palestine protester scales the Steel City's town hall to remove an Israeli flag and raise the Palestinian version, whilst the Home Secretary orders police to treat Hamas sympathisers with the full force of the law. Look, I'm asking the question, should anyone who supports a prescribed terror group be denied asylum to Britain? Should we deport anybody immediately if they say that they support that terror group? But that's the big debate with my panel of top pundits next. And tonight I am joined by the wonderful Christine Hamilton. We've got Adam Brooks and we've got Matthew Larter as well, top panellists tonight. Plus, with Netflix show The Crown planning to show, and by the way, I am not making this up, Princess Diana as a ghost in the programme's upcoming final season, are producers now overstepping the mark with their depiction of our royal family? Can I also just say, are they not? Is that the sound of the bottom of a barrel being scraped somewhere there on Netflix? But I'll get the esteemed opinion of royal correspondent and author Michael Cole. But also coming up, J.K. Rowling lashes out at Labour's Lisa Nandy for positioning herself as a champion of women's rights. But is the Harry Potter author correct that many women on the left no longer trust Labour to defend their rights? We will thrash that one out in the media buzz. And later in the show, I'm joined by comedy legend Jim Davidson as he gives his uniquely hilarious insights into one of the week's top stories. It's a good one for Jim this week. We've got this morning's, did you see this, by the way? This morning's questionable tribute to departing star of The Sofa, Holly Willoughby. Remarkable, I'll play it for you later. There'll also be the new Greatest Britain and the Union Jackass before the night is out. And of course, the first glance at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, that's on the way very shortly. But right after the news, we're Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. Well, the top story tonight from the GB newsroom is that the US Secretary of State is on his way to Israel tonight after the Hamas terrorist attacks at the weekend. Antony Blinken saying the United States is determined to make sure Israel has all it needs to defend itself. He's due to meet senior Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to discuss boosting military support.
I'm going with a very simple and clear message on behalf of the President of the United States and on behalf of the American people. And that is that the United States has Israel's back. We have the back of the Israeli people. We have their back today. We'll have it tomorrow. We will have it every day.
Meanwhile, here at home, the Metropolitan Police has appealed for footage or images of last weekend's attack in Israel. The force's counter-terrorism unit is appealing for anyone in the UK who has any direct evidence related to the terrorist attacks to come forward. And that's after the Foreign Secretary, who's in Israel today, was forced at one point to run for cover when an air siren sounded. The video was posted on social media by the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Well, the government says James Cleverly's visit was a sign of the UK's unwavering support for Israel. I show you live pictures of what's happening in Gaza right now. If you're watching on television, you can see night has fallen, but a small pool of light in the centre of Gaza City, where the only power station that stopped working hours ago has been replaced by generators, now thought to be the only source of power in the city. And to that end, the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, appealed for a humanitarian corridor to be forged into Gaza, saying crucial life-saving supplies, including medicines, power supplies, food and water, must be allowed in. And a 26-year-old man, a British man who was working as a security guard at the music festival in Israel when it was attacked by Hamas on Saturday, has been confirmed as dead. Jake Marlowe had been missing since the raid on the Supernova Festival. On Saturday, he died trying to save his friends. His mother, Lisa, wrote on Facebook that she and her family were heartbroken after hearing the crushing news. Now, in other news today, the Shadow Health Secretary says Labour would turn the NHS on its head if it got into power. Wes Streeting argued that reform is more important than pouring money into a health system that isn't working. He warned that the NHS faces bankruptcy unless it's overhauled, and he set out plans to shift its focus from hospitals to providing more care in the community.
Labour government will take immediate action to cut waiting lists. We'll provide an extra £1.1 billion to help the NHS beat the backlog, with extra clinics at evenings and weekends, providing 2 million more appointments each year. Faster treatment for patients, extra pay for staff, the first steps to cut the waiting list and beat the Tory backlog.
A Dorset councillor has lost a High Court fight with the Home Secretary today over the housing of asylum seekers on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Portland. Mayor Carolyn Parks wanted to challenge the lawfulness of the use of the barge in Portland Port, saying the Home Office needed planning permission to site it and use it in that location. Well, the vessel has been vacant since Legionella bacteria were detected on board back in August, but with that court result today and the clearance of those bacteria, the Home Office is now saying the barge is safe for asylum seekers to return on board. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Well, it's tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Let's kick off with the very first look at the first two front pages to land in front of me. I've got the Metro first here. Spiral of doom, they say on the front, and really arresting images there, a series of them. They've got the terror toll. An Israeli woman takes cover in Ashkelon yesterday while Palestinians walk through debris after the strike. And Gaza, you've got a picture on the left there of a man carrying an injured child to hospital in Gaza, and the two bullet points underneath that headline. Fresh terror as Hamas bomb hits hospital. Only Gaza power plant out of fuel in siege, just encapsulating the series of events taking place on both sides there. We've got the Eye next. More pages for you will drop, by the way, by 10:30, so we'll have those for you. But this is invasion fear grips Israel and Gaza. Again, I think it's fair to say they're trying to play both sides of the fence here. Again, same picture of that woman deeply distressed, an Israeli lady cowering behind a wall. Another picture there of what would appear to be, anyway, a Palestinian man in Gaza near some debris. Israel prepares for war on three fronts, with new unity government due to meet last night to approve invasion plans submitted by Army Chief, while thousands of troops wait near border. They also, for what it's worth as well, at the top, say on guard, Labour ready to defend election plan. Shadow Minister makes plea to Tory voting Eye readers. We're your natural home now. And that I mean, undoubtedly is something that Keir Starmer's trying to do, right? I mean, you could fit a Rizzler paper, I think, in many respects, between the Labour Party and the Tories at the moment. So those are the first two front pages. More coming your way very, very shortly. I would imagine it will be dominated, really, by the big news in the world, which is that ongoing conflict in Israel and Gaza. Now, my panel, they're back with me. I've got author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. I've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and I've got former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. But look, as the death toll from Hamas's attack on Israel continues to rise by the hour, shocking footage have emerged of a man scaling Sheffield Town Hall to replace an Israeli flag with a Palestinian flag. That's after hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters amassed outside the Israeli embassy on Monday, prompting Home Secretary Suella Braverman to tell the police to use the full force of the law to punish Hamas supporters. Bear in mind that all of these people coming out in force, all of those people that scaling buildings here in Britain, were acutely aware of what was going on in Palestine and Israel. We're acutely aware of the kind of atrocities that are being committed. In the world of Twitter and social media, you could all see the videos, and yet they still went out on the street and did that. Christine, should Suella Braverman go further, do you think, and deny asylum to anybody who supports Hamas?
100%, 150%. Thank God we've got Suella Braverman at the moment as Home Secretary. I mean, I've just seen a comment of hers here. I encourage all chief officers, police officers, to ensure that any protests which could exacerbate community tensions by way of offensive placards, chants or behaviour should be construed as incitement or harassment. If the person who did that on the top of the Sheffield City Hall, or whatever it was, is discovered to be here not fully legally, shall we say, they should be deported instantly. I mean, they may be Sheffield born and bred going back generations, I don't know, but if there's any suspicion at all, of course it's the most outrageous behaviour, it's incitement to hatred. We should be doubly careful now. Goodness knows how many of these Hamas-supporting people we've already got in this country. And I said earlier, it's to let any more in or to let any in. It's like self-injecting with smallpox. It is utter madness.
We're doing it. Europe is doing it. We're seeing it happen right now, Adam. I mean, would you say genuinely that this should be a pretty straightforward, cut-and-dry thing? If we've got boats of people coming over from countries where, let's be honest, Hamas would be considered friendly, then why are we doing it to ourselves? We don't need to import this.
I've said it numerous times on this show, and I get called a racist on Twitter for just simply wanting to secure our borders. We don't know who these people are. There's a migrant hotel near my town. They walk up and down the high road. You know, they are causing problems, and the left want to put their head in the sand and pretend that this isn't happening. We do not know the background of these people. Now, one thing about this Sheffield town hall is, where were the police? No disrespect.
I know.
You've got a guy climbing 100 foot up, you've got a mob cheering below, and there's no police around. One thing I will say is, what you said earlier, the police should stop anyone chanting anti-Semitic or threatening language or placards. I don't think the police have got the nerve. As we see yesterday in London, they wasn't getting batons out, or they wasn't forcefully moving anyone. Now, if I or a group of friends stood outside a mosque, we wouldn't, because I've got a lot of respect for Muslims and mosques. But if I was to stand outside a mosque and demonstrate, I would be carted off straight away. So there is an issue here where our policing, it's two tiers. We need to know, are they on the side of good, or are they going to allow this?
They're frightened to act against this lot, the people who are currently on the screen. They're frightened. But where were they, for example, when Just Stop Oil put all those banners all over Rishi Sunak's house? I mean, the police have been found wanting time and time again.
Matthew, I'll bring you in. A lot of people, for a very long time, have said that we've been inviting people in who do not wish us well. And those people were right, weren't they?
Well, we don't know what the backgrounds of, in terms of whether, as Christine says, whether people are British citizens or whether they are recently arrived or migrants. I mean, clearly the protests are completely inappropriate. They're not protests, they're sick demonstrations of support for terrorists, and we can say it even if BBC colleagues won't. And I think you're absolutely right. This is a big test for the police. The police, it is absolutely clear. It's not a party political issue. I think all the parties are united that the police need to be doing a tough job and protecting all our communities, but particularly our Jewish community, feeling vulnerable at this time. So this is a big test for the police. They need to not have...
I'm sorry, but I agree with you, absolutely, but I think it's a big test for border control. I think it's...
absolutely.
We cannot just be... I mean, it's like a Trojan horse. It is like a Trojan horse. And you could say, Christine, as well, you know, it's not just how people might feel about the Jews, which, you know, is bad enough. We've got a large Jewish community right across the country, really. We don't want people to feel like on Friday there's calls for some kind of international Islamic day of... or a fundamentalist Islamic day of action against Jewish people, really, which is insane.
Let's also remember...
That should be incitement to hatred.
But it is, surely. It is. How would you feel living in Golders Green or, you know, to stereotype too much, but somewhere in North Manchester, for example?
Patrick, I've got many Muslim friends as well, but we've got to remember, there's many people in the Muslim community that will come out and say how horrific the actions of Hamas work.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got to be careful not to demonise a whole religion or a whole community for that.
Absolutely.
But the scenes that we've seen on the streets of London cheering is in such bad taste, and the police really do need to clamp down on that.
What concerns me is, I mean, my parents and any people of that generation who fought in the Second World War, they honestly thought that was it. They thought there probably would be world peace. And now we've got tinderboxes all over the place. And I see the hand of Russia behind Iran, etc., in all this. We've had Hamas apparently have paid a lot of visits to Moscow earlier this year. So goodness knows what Russia's involvement is. They will be only too happy to have a tinderbox in the Middle East.
I think you're right to be concerned about that.
And I think it's terrifying for world peace.
Because we're being pushed and pulled around now.
We're weakening the West is weakening itself by opening its borders. It doesn't matter what colour or what religion they are. We're opening our borders to people with unknown backgrounds.
Well, I think it's vital that we stand firm as a country, but also we stand firm as communities. And I think over the coming days, I'm sure that there will be opportunities for people to show that by coming out in support, both against what's happened and in support of peace for everybody in the region.
Absolutely. And I think I was doing this show last week, and there was a big discussion on one of the shows about whether or not it was outrageous to say that there was any issues with multiculturalism in this country, or that diversity might not indeed actually be our greatest strength. And then, lo and behold, here we are, out on the streets, people rampaging through it, and you think, it hasn't worked everywhere. It hasn't worked everywhere. But now, it's been a day of travel misery for thousands of Brits, with all flights cancelled at Luton Airport. After this massive blaze ripped through a multi-storey car park, there was a shocking moment. A Range Rover exploded into a fireball so powerful that it collapsed the entire building. Watch.
I'm not saying to you because there should be playback even if the camera is destroyed. Yeah. At least. Oh my God. That looks fake.
Lord, remarkable. Luckily, nobody died. Miraculously, nobody died. After 12 hours battling the flames, the firefighters, they extinguished the fire. Christine, you seem exercised by that.
No, I'm exercised by it, but are you 100% certain that it was the Range Rover? Because I heard it had been overtaken by the fact that it was a Tesla.
Well, this is it, right?
Which would be even more worrying.
There's a lot of unverifiable information.
Yeah.
Some people coming out and blaming the diesel, some people coming out and blaming the electric.
Why would you blame a diesel unless you've got a green agenda and you want to push this green nonsense? No, why would you blame the diesel? Diesels don't just combust.
No.
The chief fire officer,
but electric vehicles
now said
do.
that there was a lack of sprinklers, which obviously whatever caused it.
That doesn't mean what the
I know, but I'm saying that there needs to be looked at why Luton Airport is having car parks without the right.
Listen, if you're an eco nut, you don't want it to be an electric car, which it's going to end up being.
Apparently they do hybrids of a diesel and electric.
We have one.
You've got one?
Yes.
Well, you want to park it far away from your house.
Yeah.
I tell you what,
we don't plug it in. We don't have to plug it in. It's not that sort of hybrid, no.
It's a regenerative hybrid.
It's a whatever.
Oh, they're a lot of money, those, Christine. I can't afford one of them.
Second-hand, darling, second-hand.
Some of us can't afford a car.
Listen, fairly soon the dust will settle and we will know exactly what it was. It was just that you said with such confidence, Range Rover.
No.
I wondered if you knew
I've got no skin in the game when it comes to Range Rover or Tesla.
My money's on an electric car.
This is what's doing the rounds. I don't...
Apologies if I'm wrong, of course.
We appear to have become... had more of a row about that than the ongoing global death spiral that we're in the Middle East. But there we go, that's where we are. But coming up, J.K. Rowling has lashed out at Lisa Nandy for positioning herself as the champion of women's rights. So, is the Harry Potter author right that many women on the left no longer trust Labour to defend them? My wonderful panel will debate that very, very shortly. We'll also have another look at tomorrow's front pages, because more are coming in now by the minute. And next, the Netflix show, The Crown, is planning to portray Princess Diana as a ghost in the programme's upcoming final season. Our producer's now overstepping the mark. Frankly, I think they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, actually. I will also get the esteemed opinion of royal correspondent and author Michael Cole. I'll be back in a tick.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Well, King of Comedy Jim Davidson is on his way, but up next, it's royal correspondent and author Michael Cole, and streaming giant Netflix has dropped a long-awaited trailer for the final season of hit drama The Crown. Have a look.
The crown is a symbol of permanence. It's something you are, not what you do.
Some portion of our natural selves is always lost. We have all made sacrifices. It is not a choice. It is a duty.
But what about the life I put aside? The woman I put aside?
Oh, gosh, moody, isn't it? But producers are under fire after news broke that the late Princess Diana will be featured as a ghost in the 6th and final season, due to hit our screens next month. So the scenes will show the late Diana speaking from beyond the grave to both her ex-husband Charles, I'll be quite intrigued to see what she said to him, and Queen Elizabeth, as well as featuring a tasteless recreation of the Paris smash that tragically killed the late princess back in 1997. It's going to be the most controversial series ever. A Netflix source told the Mail Online that the scenes were visualisations of innermost thoughts. rather than interpretations of anything supernatural. I mean, good grief, have a day off. Michael, thank you very much. Welcome to the fray. Welcome to the show. Are Netflix scraping the bottom of the barrel here? Is it sickening and tasteless to have Princess Diana as a ghost?
This all starts next month. It's very sad. It's very tasteless. I'm not a huge critic of The Crown. I think the first two series, starring Claire Foy as the young queen, were utterly brilliant. And Buckingham Palace was hugging itself with glee that it was such a brilliant advertisement for the monarchy. But this series is, I think, The Crown's bridge far too far. And really, isn't the story strong enough without conjuring up ghosts from the grave? In the history of theatre and stories, do ghosts ever really work? Banquo's ghost or the ghost of Jacob Marley? I mean, it is rather a cheap conceit, and I wish they hadn't gone there. I think it's demeaning to the people who survive, and it's demeaning to the memory of those who are sadly gone before us. So I'm sorry to see it happen, because I think many things about the series have been good. They've been advised by a very good historian, Robert Lacey. And of course, there have been mistakes, but by and large, the theme has been correct. The facts have been within the bounds of what actually happened. So I'm sad to see it, and I wish it were not happening.
I think it cheapens it. Honestly, I think it cheapens it completely. The idea of introducing a ghost into anything, let alone the ghost of Diana, after you've also done the portrayal of the moment of her death, I think is deeply, deeply offensive to the vast majority of the British public.
Well, it's certainly offensive to me. I understand they stop short of the Alpha Tunnel. You do not actually see the crash, which would be unbearable. But if you remember, Patrick, it was said by Peter Morgan, the originator of this, that it was going to end at the end of the last series. And then they decided, for whatever reason, whether Netflix wanted to squeeze the last drop of juice out of the lemon, that they would go on and do this. And as I said, a bridge too far. Was it necessary? It is not necessary. You know, the late princess, she died on the same day as Mother Teresa died. And there was a very touching cartoon of the little Mother Teresa of Calcutta greeting Princess Diana, the tall Princess Diana at the pearly gates, saying to her, "You didn't think I'd let you come here without me, did you?" And that is as far as you want to go into the other world, into heaven, into the celestial world. Diana's dead. We miss her. I certainly do, 26 years later. Let her rest in peace. And I think it's unfair to her sons and everybody else, and even to the king and the queen.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree about that. You know, again, there are other people involved here. You don't regularly hear me have sympathy for Harry, necessarily. We are going to go on and talk about. But the idea of your mum being portrayed as a ghost in The Crown, which apparently he watches, he's come out and said he's in favour of it. But now, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, there we go, are once again being accused of climate hypocrisy after the couple travelled in a 7-car convoy of gas-guzzling SUVs, only to drive to a garage just 200 metres away from one that they were previously parked in. I mean, come on, Harry and Meghan were in New York to attend World Mental Health Day Festival. Look, Michael, are they guilty of climate hypocrisy here, or is it all about safety?
Patrick, the last time I saw a convoy like that, it was at Elvis Presley's funeral when there were 11 Cadillacs, including his hearse, and I was there reporting it in Memphis in 1977. So, I mean, this is really quite awful. I mean, hypocrisy upon hypocrisy. And of course, the last time the Sussexes were in New York, we had this great tale of the 2-hour chase through the streets of Manhattan. And the mayor and everybody else, the police chief, said, it couldn't have happened here. You must have dreamt it, because such a thing is not impossible. It's impossible in New York City. And they were generally laughed out of the house scornfully because of that claim. At the same time as, of course, the lovely Meghan was appearing in her off-the-shoulder beautiful outfit. The Princess of Wales, Kate, was in Birmingham doing her own bit for World Mental Health Day in a much more low-key, but a much more studied and a much more appreciated way. That's the difference between the two of them. And it's up to people to judge which they prefer.
Well, indeed, and I think the people do tend to judge, actually. Look, Michael, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you on. You take care. It's Michael Cole, over and out. Thank you very much. Now, coming up in Uncancelled, this morning hosts Craig Doyle and Rochelle Humes gave Holly Willoughby a really weird send-off, actually, earlier today, after the presenter sensationally quit the show. I'll play that to you. But comedy legend Jim Davidson gives his uniquely hilarious insight into that, as well as a bizarre moment that has emerged of Labour's Lisa Nandy and John Ashworth belting out the hit tune Common People by Pulp. That was at karaoke. J.K. Rowling has also lashed out at Lisa Nandy, though, for positioning herself as a champion of women's rights. So, is the Harry Potter author right that many women on the left no longer trust Labour to defend them? My panel will debate that. That's coming your way shortly. I'll also bring you tomorrow's news tonight as we get stuck into Thursday's front pages. Back in a tick.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time to bring you tomorrow's news tonight and more from the front pages that have just been delivered hot off the press. We start with the Mail. By the way, can I just say, you are really going to want to see what's on the front page of The Sun. But we start with the Mail. The King calls them terrorists. Why can't the BBC? So, yeah, fine. Charles and William both condemn Hamas, which, by the way, was a very, very, very tricky political decision for them to make. It's one of the most political things in the world, isn't it, Israel-Palestine? They waded into it, but our national broadcaster is still calling them militants. And since I've been on air as well, I can confirm the BBC have been reported to Ofcom over this. So there we go. Something, of course, I would know nothing about. The Sun. Here we go. Get a load of this. We pocketed Captain Tom 800 grand. I'm going to read you the opening of this massive story. Captain Tom's family yesterday confessed to pocketing money from the £39 million NHS fundraising veteran. Tearful daughter, Hannah Ingram Moore, said they kept £800,000 from 3 books he had written. Wow, wow, wow. Well, there we go. That will no doubt be a talking point around the dinner tables and the breakfast tables, etc. tomorrow. That's an exclusive in The Sun. Captain Tom's family's confession. Can we whiz it over to The Guardian? Yeah, we will. Israelis suspended between fear, grief and foreboding. Pictures on the front of The Guardian, of course, of tearful, mournful Israelis. Netanyahu forms war cabinet as crisis grows. Nice to see no ridiculously offensive cartoons on the front page of The Guardian, which is a nice change sometimes there. Daily Express now. Outrage over order not to jail rapists as prisons are full. Fury has greeted a plan to temporarily stop sending rapists and burglars to jail. Prisons are full, apparently. That, again, will be a massive talking point tomorrow. At The Times now, just one more for you. Israeli coalition ready to invade. Netanyahu forms war government. Troops expected to cross into Gaza next week. And BA suspends flights over rocket fear. They also, there at the bottom of the front page on The Times, carry that story as well as The Express on rapists going free. Judges told that prisons are full. An absolute disgrace, I think everyone can agree that. I mean, it's a horrific crime. Yeah, it's ridiculous. There's no point, is there, anymore? I mean, what's the point of a judicial system if rapists are walking free? But we'll get into that. Anyway, so more on the media buzz now with tonight's panel. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton. We've also got businessman and activist Adam Brooks. And we've got former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Thank you very much, everybody. Now we're going to talk about J.K. Rowling, yes, because she's launched a sensational attack on Lisa Nandy off of the Labour Party, as she positioned herself as a champion of women's rights during this year's speech at the party conference. Take it away, Lisa.
Absolute priority will be to embolden and empower women and girls in every part of the world. Women's rights are human rights and human rights are non-negotiable.
I was just pumped up about all of that, yes, very much so. Well, responding to that speech, an incensed J.K. Rowling said that the shadow International Development Secretary, well, she said this. You said that rapists should be transferred to women's prison if they self-identify as women. Given that you're one of the biggest reasons many women on the left no longer trust Labour to defend their rights, do you stand by these comments? I mean, J.K. Rowling there pulling no punches, as she very rarely does these days. The reason the Harry Potter author was so furious has something to do with these comments about gender by Nandy back in 2020.
I believe fundamentally in people's right to self-ID, and I believe that the Gender Recognition Act strikes the wrong balance in relation to that. So I think that crimes that are recorded should be recorded as that person wishes, having gone through that process, received support and self-identified. I think trans women are women, and I think trans men are men. So I think that they should be accommodated in the prison of their choosing.
Yeah, fascinating how so many people in the Labour Party, as far as I can tell, have had a complete politics transplant in recent years. But J.K. Rowling is singling Nandy out here. But is she right that generally many women on the left no longer trust Labour to defend their rights? Well, Christine, no one would ever accuse you of being on the left, but would you trust Labour to defend your rights as a real-life woman?
I was just going to say, no one would accuse me of being on the left. Well, Matthew probably knows more about the inner inner thoughts of the Labour women. But what Lisa Nandy said then was that trans women are women and trans men are men. That's clearly what she believes. She may have been told to rein in. Keir Starmer is a Trojan horse, isn't he? I mean, I know he didn't know about whether a woman did or didn't have a penis, but he's recovered on all that now. But he's basically... And behind him are stacked up an awful lot of lefties. I mean, you know, they may have got rid of...
Well, it is the Labour Party. I mean, I will rarely defend,
lefties,
but that is, you know, it would be weird if they were.
I'm talking about far lefties, sorry.
Right,
far lefties. They may have, you know, got Corbyn slightly under wraps, but he's still there. John McConnell is still there, you know, great supporter of the IRA. He's a communist, basically. They're all still there. Diane Abbott she may have been dissed from being a Labour candidate, but she's still there in the background. Dawn Butler, all those sort of people. I made a little
Well, as long
list.
as Diane Abbott's not doing the accounts, then I think I'm all right, really.
I can assure you of that.
But they are all there.
And she's suspended currently.
What I find so frightening is that if they don't stand up for women's rights, who the hell is going to stand up for women's rights? And they are, for the infinitesimally small number of transgender people, they are totally destroying the rights of half the population.
Yeah, I just wonder, Matthew, whether or not people do have short memories. It really wasn't that long ago that Labour was very squiffy on some key issues of the day, whether it was over the Salisbury attack, whether it's over Israel, whether it's over women. I mean, Keir Starmer spluttering about whether or not a woman can have a penis, you know?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, on the Salisbury attack and on defence issues, I mean, clearly Jeremy was wrong. I mean, I spent my entire time opposing the Jeremy leadership, fighting to get rid of him, fighting not to have him in the first place. So, I mean, you know, the sensible voice of the Labour Party, after, you know, I mean, Labour's always been strong on defence. It was Labour who were in government when NATO was formed. Ernie Bevan, who was the Foreign Secretary then, formed it. So it's hardwired into the party's
On women,
DNA.
though. On
the
women.
women's issue. On the women's issue. I mean, look, you know, I think that I would be interested to know what Lisa is going to say in response to what JK said. Lisa is a passionate believer in the rights of women and girls. Labour's very clear now on self-ID, which it hadn't been, which obviously it wasn't at that stage. And so it'll be interesting to see what Lisa says.
Adam Brooks, you're shaking your head.
JK Rowling, or Rowling, however you say her name, is probably, you know, she's done more for women's rights when it comes to this trans agenda than I would say any other woman in the world. She has fought back. Women deserve safe spaces, single-sex toilets, changing rooms, prisons, sport. At the end of the day, it can be dangerous to have Dave identifying as a woman, you know, just because he wears lippy and a wig. We cannot go down this route of self-ID. It's ridiculous.
And that's why Labour's come out firmly against self-ID.
Know this.
Keir Starmer's against self-ID.
But she was in favour of it.
Look,
she was, but she's not in charge of the policy, and I'm not sure that's ever you now.
Would she defend women's-only spaces now?
I don't...
Well, I believe, I mean, certainly Labour as a party would,
But this is the epitome, isn't it, of, you know, I've got some policies and if you don't like them, I've got others. Is that right, you know?
90% of women, probably 95% of women, will agree with JK Rowling over Lisa Nandy or the Labour Party. They're 51% of the population. I mean, that's a lot of votes that you can lose through saying the wrong thing.
I mean, J.K. Rowling was a big Labour supporter. I think I would like to see her sit down with Keir, because it would be brilliant if J.K. Rowling came home to Labour. She was a very... I mean, she supports a great supporter and donor, and it would be great to have her back, because she's clearly an extremely talented person.
According to Matthew last week, I just want to prove that I do listen to what you say, women now, I didn't know this, are more likely to support Labour than the Tories. It used to be the other way around. He says they're more... So they should be extremely careful not to off women.
Even ones with penises.
Ah, well.
Especially ones with penises. Especially... Right, OK, good stuff. Now, coming up, Norwich Football Club and the BBC are nominated in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But do either of them take home tonight's crowns? Find out very shortly. But next, in Uncancelled, this morning host, Craig Doyle and Rochelle Humes, gave Holly Willoughby a really weird send-off earlier today after the presenter sensationally quit the show. Comedy legend Jim Davidson gives his uniquely hilarious insight into that, as well as a bizarre moment has emerged, of course, also involving Lisa Nandy, but this time as well as John Ashworth. I've just found out one of my panellists has an interesting connection with. Belting out a hit tune, Common People, by Pulp. I'll see you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio. Time now for Uncancelled. And tonight I am joined by comedy legend Jim Davidson. Great stuff. Now, there were jubilant scenes at the Labour Party conference, Jim, as Sir Keir Starmer laid out his quite flimsy vision for Britain, but Labour frontbenchers Lisa Nandy, John Ashworth, they took the revelry to another level with the karaoke catastrophe at the late-night party. All right, I've had to watch this, and now so do you. God. Oh, Jim, what do you make of that?
Future leaders, eh? These are the people that's going to represent us around the world. And what has she come as, that woman? What did she dress up as? Ridiculous.
Oh, I don't know, Jim. I'll tell you what. I'm going to just quickly on that. I think it's one thing to criticise the singing, but I actually thought she looked quite fetching in that dress. But we can leave that there, right? Or just talk about the singing and about the way that they've gone about it. Do you think? I think she did. It's horses for courses, Jim. Go on. So what do you make? What do you make of the singing?
Well, the singing was rubbish, wasn't it? Just like their policies. I mean, really, they've started celebrating. Do you remember when Neil Kinnock was dancing round? He's like a self-licking ice cream, fell over on the beach, done deal. If people really watching this programme, Patrick, think that those two idiots are fit to govern our country, well, we all need to think about moving. Because, you know, last one out of Britain, put the light out. If they get in, we are done.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Look, I get you. I mean, politicians almost never emerge well from karaoke, right? It just doesn't really happen.
It's like Michael Gove dancing. It's Mr. Bean, isn't it?
Yeah, fair enough.
They're absolutely hopeless.
They are. They do have a tough time appearing normal, which is it never ceases to amaze me, Jim. How people who essentially deliberately go into a line of work that is essentially a popularity contest are so afraid of the people and have such a hard time, don't they, appearing normal in public. But, I mean, Rishi Sunak had a bit of a howler, though, to be fair. This latest TikTok video, which involves the Prime Minister bizarrely attempting a typical transition on the platform, which, by the way, means nothing to me, but watch this.
If you live in or around Blythe, you're going to want to hear this. We're giving your town £20 million to improve...
All right.
Crazy. Why do they do it? Look, he's a really nice bloke, Richie. And he, Richie, Prime Minister, watch me. This is how you do it. Watch me, you ready?
Go on, let's get Jim back on. Go on, Jim. There he is. Go on, Jim.
You people from Blythe, I'm the Prime Minister. It's tough out there. I'm going to give you 20 million. Don't you worry about that. That's how you do it, Richie. Stop reading the audio. Grow a pair.
I think this show never ceases to take a turn for the surreal. Almost every single time we get you on, actually, Jim. I love to see it, all right? I do. I really do love to see it. Jim, look, you've obviously given him some tips there, haven't you, on how to do it properly. And I do think that maybe you would be quite a good Prime Minister. But saying goodbye to people, Jim, is something I've always personally struggled with. As it turns out, did ITV with This Morning. So this morning, the hosts Rochelle Humes and Craig Doyle, no, me neither, paid a bizarre tribute to Holly Willoughby today after she sensationally quit her 14-year presenting role. Look, let's take a little look, shall we?
Hello and welcome to your Wednesdays this morning. And of course, we want to start by sending our love, best wishes and respect to our Holly.
Last night, Holly made what we know will have been a heartbreaking decision to leave This Morning after 14 years.
Austin. Oh, Jim. Oh, it's got Jim. Oh, it's got Jim. You all right there?
I know. Yeah, I can do that even better as well. Here we go. Take two. Today, Holly made the most terrible decision to leave, and it's understandable the pressure she is under. All television people are under pressure, but we'd just like to say she's part of our family. And Holly, please don't come back, because we've got a nice paycheck now standing in for you, and we're trying to look as solemn as we can. But please, don't call us no more. We're quite happy having your salary.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely right. It's absolutely right, isn't it? Do you think This Morning can survive? I like the fact, though, by the way, I mean, seriously, how cheap that looked. They thought, right, look, we've got to knock something out here in seconds for Holly, so we're just going to splash words over it. Holly will miss you. Family comes first.
Patrick, do you think that's the right expression? Knock something out? No. Listen, I know we're past the watershed.
I apologise.
We will be cancelling that. Look, Holly is a great presenter. Look, there are people like you that can present, and there's other people like these two idiots that we just saw. No, come on, Patrick, you're fantastic. We all love you. And you're very, very professional, and you're very funny. These two read the words. I used to have this with John Virgo in Big Break. He couldn't differentiate between what he had to read and what the action were. So this would be him. I said, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another series of Big Break. Good to have you here, John. Thank you, Jim, stands back, look at Jim. That was him.
Oh, Jim.
Seriously, he's worse than Piercy on the daytime programme. He ain't got a clue. He could be reading the Daily Mirror.
Oh, Jim, I love you, and not just because you say such lovely things about me. As Jim Davidson, everybody. Jim, I'll see you soon, my good man. Take it easy, all right? I'll never change as well. Comedy legend Jim Davidson, thank you very much. Right, it is time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union Jackass. Right, we're going to have to keep it snappy. Christine, I'll go with you. Who's your greatest?
The people of Llanelli in South Wales who have fought a steadfast fight 24/7, fighting on behalf of local people to stop their Stradey Park Hotel, which is very important in the neighbourhood, being overrun by migrants. They have won their fight. The Home Office have backed down. Hooray!
They have. Adam?
Mine is Norwich Football Club for their very powerful mental health video that they tweeted out. It's been seen by over 50 million people now, I believe.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? If we had a bit longer, we'd play a bit of that, because it is good. Matthew, go on.
It should be... I should have nominated my former flatmate, Jonathan Ashworth, for his fantastic singing at the Labour karaoke. But instead, I will nominate Labour's Wes Streeting, Shadow Health Secretary, for saying the NHS needs reform and not just more investment.
You're not winning.
Oh, yeah, no, you're not, actually.
I never win.
Look, it was a close-run thing. I'm going for Llanelli because purely because I've actually covered that, with them for a very long period of time, and I think that is a very visible sign of what community can actually do if we keep it. But there we go.
Thank you.
Right, Union Jackass. I'll go back. Start again with you, Christine. Go on.
Thank you for that, Patrick. I will correct your pronunciation off-air so as not to embarrass you. Llanelli.
He tried.
Right. He tried very hard. No, he did. Sorry, right. Jackass is the BBC for refusing to call out Hamas as the terrorists that they are. They are funded by us, for goodness sake.
OK.
Oh, all right.
No, we've got seconds left.
Yes, seconds left. OK, finished.
Mine is Brighton Morris, which is a Morris dancing group who has dropped the word men as to not offend trans or non-binary people. They still won't let women in, though.
Matthew?
There's the Scottish Greens who shamefully, remember they're in government in Scotland, who shamefully have yet to evoke a policy calling for the UK government to delist Hamas as a terrorist organisation.
Right, tough one. I am actually, believe it or not, going to go for the Scottish Greens. There you go. Any excuse. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. I will be back tomorrow. Wonderful panel. Love to you all. Bye. Have a good night.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Today's rain clears south, turning sunnier in the north for Thursday, but also turning colder as weather fronts sink south, allowing cold air from the north to push into much of the UK. However, these weather fronts, marking the boundary between warm air to the south and cold air to the north, contain some wet weather. And we've certainly seen a wet day across much of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia. And rain sinks slowly south overnight. Still some heavy downpours through parts of South Wales, the South Midlands, East Anglia. Damp and gloomy as we begin things on Thursday, but mild in the far south. Colder but brighter across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, a frost in places. And actually, that's where the brightest weather will remain throughout Thursday. Plenty of sunny spells for Northern Ireland, North Wales, Northern England, southern and eastern Scotland. Still some showers and a bit of a breeze for the northwest of Scotland, but not as much as Wednesday. Further south, it stays damp and gloomy. All the heavier rain eases for a time. 19 Celsius in the south, albeit with grey leaden skies. Then the rain peps up once again through much of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England for a time on Friday morning. Some heavy downpours also potentially for the southeast of England. Could cause some issues, a rain warning in force. That clears through, and then colder weather arrives for the weekend, with quite a few showers for Saturday, drier for Sunday, and some overnight frosts.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think